Just wanted to update you guys. I got an email this morning from Amazon saying that the book is online and it has been updated with the corrections to the typos I mentioned in the first update I gave. So, if you want to get a copy of the book, copies are now available. I'll put a link in the description, of course. The price $17.77, so that's 700 and something page book, 777 page book. So, I think it's a pretty good deal. Like I said in the previous video, not making any money off of it really. I did, and I guess so. I'm going to delete the last update I gave just because it tells you in the update that the book is not to order the book yet. But now since it is available, I'm going to delete that video. So I do want to go over the things I said in the video again outside of the update about the hard copy, just in case people didn't see it. And so like I said, it is available now. It is updated. The corrections that I mentioned have been uploaded, and the first time I sent the manuscript in, it took 3 days to get it approved. This time it just took not even 24 hours. So I guess they probably just rubber stamped it, since it was it didn't really change much of the actual text itself. Also, in the previous video I mentioned, if you had downloaded the PDF version for free, and there will be a link in the description of this video to download the PDF for free. I did corrected the typos in that one also. So if you have version 1.0 or version 1.01, you need to go to the link, download the updated version 1.02, and it's got all these typos corrected. So you can get the updated one and just delete the other one, so that it's not being passed around by people or whatever. So get the update if you haven't already. The book is live. So one thing I told in the previous update was this thing about the page numbers, and I probably didn't explain it well there anyway, so I'll give it another shot right now. So there's a few things that happened in the process of making this book that was, in my opinion, God confirming that this was the way that He wanted, or what He wanted. So the PDF that you download, it is set to print on letter size paper, and I did that because if you have a printer and you used an 8.5 by 11 paper, which is a standard size, letter size paper, you can print it and it'll come out and it'll look correct, and the margins will be correct and whatnot. And so on 8.5 by 11 paper, that comes out to 531 pages. Well, when you're going to be doing this on-demand printing for a book, you have to adjust all that, adjust it down to the correct paper size. The book itself is 6 by 9, so I had to adjust it to fit 6 by 9 paper. I had to adjust the margins to fit a book, and there was a limit to the number of pages that you could have on this Amazon print on demand, and I think the number for a 6 by 9 book was 828 pages. So I had to get down below that. So I did what I could to adjust the margins. Still was like over by, 10 or 15 pages. So I took the text down one font, and that knocked like 50 pages off the book. So now I was down below the 828. Don't remember exactly what I was at. I just know I was below it. So I was like, okay, cool. So I start scrolling through the document, just making sure that it didn't screw anything up. making sure it still looked correct. And in the process of doing that, I realized that the footnotes were now, because I made the adjustment to the text, the footnotes were actually bigger than the text. So normally if you're reading a book, the footnotes are either the same size as the text, or sometimes, usually I think they're a little bit smaller. So I reduced the font size of the footnotes to match the main body text of the book, and of course that also adjusted the number of pages down. But I didn't care at that point, because I was below the threshold I needed to be at, so I didn't go and see what it adjusted to or whatever. So I scrolled through the book. Everything looks good. The formatting changes didn't mess anything up. I had a little bit of a challenge with the table of contents, getting it to fit correctly, but other than that, we were in good shape. So that's the manuscript I sent to Amazon to publish for the hard copy book. And when I uploaded the manuscript, it gave me a preview, and I had to go through the preview and look at the various pages of the book to make sure that it looked correct. And I started doing that, and it was at that point I realized that the changes I made, coincidentally, ended up being 777 pages. And as I've said before, I'm one of those people who likes the whole like I notice if you see numbers, like if you look at the clock and it's like 11:11, or sometimes these random numbers that show up in sequence. To me, I've noticed that a lot of times it seems to be when I'm asking God for confirmation about something or whatnot. And so it's something I notice. Like, it's something I just take note of. Like, maybe that's God trying to tell me I'm on the right track or whatever. And so obviously when I saw that it came up to 777, I was like, whoa, that's kind of crazy, because in Scripture, 7 is a number associated with God. And generally what it's thought to mean, it means either perfection or completion. And so I feel like that this was God communicating to me and saying, hey, look, you're on the right track, you did a good job, or whatnot. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then, so when you're using Amazon print on demand, I've never done this before. I've never written or published a book or whatever, so this is all new to me. They give you a minimum price. So initially, I uploaded the book with color text, because if you'll notice in the PDF, it's got red letters for any quote from Yeshua or any statement from Yeshua. It's like a red letter Bible, right? And so in order to preserve that in the hard copy, I had to select color printing. Now, the cost of black and white printing per book is something like $10. And then Amazon adds, shipping and handling and all that stuff onto it. But the price just for printing is like $10 and something for the black and white book. When you add color printing, the cost just for printing the book, before Amazon adds any handling to it or anything, was like $65. And then they have a minimum price that you can charge. So they take that $65, they add their handling fees and whatever else onto it, and then they give you a minimum price, and you have to charge at least this much, or they won't list your book. And so the list price, the minimum list price for a color book that would have had the red letters, was $86. So if I were to do the red letter version, it would cost you $86 to buy it. And I thought, okay, people are probably not going to want to pay $86 for this. Black and white, the print cost is $10. Amazon adds in their fees or whatnot, and it came out to like 17 something for the minimum price. And then I ended up just selecting a price, and I kind of just played off of what the page number was. I figured if this is what God wanted, then we'll set the price there too, $17.77. So when all is said and done, like I said previously, I will, like, Amazon is going to give me like 30 cents per book for every one they sell. Like, that's my commission or royalties or whatever they call it. I don't know. So, I mentioned that, and somebody was like, hey, you don't need to make any money off this. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not making money off of it because I plan on printing these off and giving them away. And so I've already spent, I've already got money invested in it. You have to pay for copywriting and all this stuff. I'm not going to get that back. I had to buy books for research purposes in order to put this together. I'm not getting that back. I don't plan on it. I don't plan on, like, this 30 whatever cents is not even enough to mail a letter, first of all, but also I'm going to give away a lot more of these than I'm going to sell, probably. Like, I've got several people I want to send one to already, and then I have some thoughts on how to distribute some and get them into the hands of people they may benefit. So I'm not making money, not looking to make money, not gonna make money. I'm not gonna profit off of this at all. It's something that, like, Amazon gives you a recommended price. They recommended something like $25 or $27, something like that. They recommended I sell these for almost $30, and I would have gotten $5 or $6 per book or whatever. Like, I think that I think for Amazon it's like a 40% commission. So whatever I raise the price, I would get 40% of that. So you can do the math. But again, I don't want to make money off of it. I just want to give it to you. I want to give it to you for whatever, for cost. And then the 30 cents or whatever, that's really just a buffer. If the price goes up, I can keep the price. If the price to me goes up, I can keep the price consistent, at least for a while. With Biden economics, it'll probably be $30 a copy by the end of the year. But I'm doing it just to have a buffer, keep the price from going up for a while, and whatever. So anyway, the book is live. You can get a copy of the book at cost, basically at cost, at cost plus like 30 cents or whatever, a quarter. So there it is. So yeah, there's that. And I guess that's it. I don't know that I have really anything else to update on. The process of putting this together was primarily just taking, at least for the Gospel according to the Hebrews portion, was you just took the Gospel of Matthew, and then I took all the quotes that we have from the Gospel according to the Hebrews, the historical quotes from men like Eusebius, Origen, Jerome, and all these guys. And so then you get these quotes where they say the Gospel according to the Hebrews says, blah, 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 whatever. And then you got to think, okay, where did this quote come from? So, like somebody asked about one of them the other day, where there was a quote that we have where Yeshua says that he selects from those that are worthy. And I was like, okay, so where does he talk about people being worthy? And so I went through the Gospel of Matthew, and there's a portion where he's talking about people being not worthy. Whoever doesn't, leave father or son or mother or daughter for me is not worthy of me. Whoever doesn't pick up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. So I'm like, okay, so he's talking about people being not worthy. And then by inserting that quote from the Gospel of the Hebrews in that portion, he goes from saying, these people are not worthy, these people I choose who are worthy, and it fit with the text. It created like this contrast, like this thesis and antithesis type of thing. And so that was like how I selected that. There was the and so other people have done this. Like, I'm not the first person to do it. Like, one of the books that I give a link to in the sources document was written by someone who did this same process. I think he did more research on it. I just piggybacked off his research and just kind of did my own version. But there were quotes that he left out. And years ago, I bought a copy of this reconstructed Gospel of the Hebrews from someone else, this other person who had like an internet ministry. And some of the quotes and some of the information we have about the Gospel according to the Hebrews from early historical sources is saying that in the Gospel according to the Hebrews, Yeshua is speaking against eating meat, or he's presented as not eating meat, I think is the way Epiphanius words it. So we have like historical information that says that in the Gospel according to the Hebrews, they were not talking about eating meat. We have historical witnesses to the story of the feeding of the multitude before the year 200, and back then there was no mention of fish. It was bread. He fed them with bread. And in fact, even going through and looking at the current Gospels, the way they are now, if you go and read those sections where he talks about the feeding of the multitude, sometimes the fish isn't even mentioned. And it says that he took the bread and distributed it. I think this is the way it reads in John, but he distributes the bread, and then the fish is mentioned as an afterthought. And he also did the same with the fish. And it's so there's evidence in the text that the fish was added. There's evidence historically that the fish were added. We have at least five early witnesses before the year 200 that speak about the feeding of the multitude, and none of those five mention the fish. If you ever are reading a book today, and there is like a book about the Gospels, and the feeding of the multitude is mentioned, the author of that book will always be like, and then he fed the multitude with the bread and the fish. I don't know if no one ever mentions the feeding of the multitude and doesn't mention the fish, but the five early witnesses we have don't. So again, that's evidence that it was added. When I was a kid, growing up, I went to a Catholic parochial school, and we had nuns and Catholic priests teaching us in the school. And we had a religion class. And I remember in religion class, I think it was either 5th or 6th grade, because I remember the room that I was in. And it was the room I was in 5th and 6th grade. But the nun teaching religion class, we got to this story about the fish. It was one of the gospel stories about the fish. And the nun says, now, all of the stories about the fish were added after the fact. She said they're not original. Someone added them later, because fish was a symbol of Christianity, and so there were no, the fish were not mentioned in the New Testament, and somebody at some point thought, hey, we should mention something about fish in the text, and so they quote fixed the Gospels by going in and inserting the fish stories. I don't know where she got her information. She was talking to a room full of 5th and 6th graders. But this nun said it as very matter-of-factly. This is what happened. These stories were not originally part of the Gospels. So I have that witness. That's a personal interaction that I had in my life. Now, I know it's not like proof or evidence or whatever, like on a scholarly level, but I feel like that God sometimes puts people in your path to teach you something, and that's something they taught me, is these fish stories were added. So, in the Gospel according to the Hebrews that I have, it doesn't have the fish stories. Now, this copy that I mentioned that I bought several years back from this guy who had done the same thing. He took the quotes and he redid the Gospel of Matthew. Well, the thing is, any mentions that steered away from, eating meat, he left all those out. And he left them out because he had a doctrinal bias against it. In fact, this guy in particular, Like, I've seen him on religious, like, pages on Facebook. I used to be Facebook friends with him. He would go into groups of people or posts where people were talking about Yeshua being a vegetarian and the evidence for it, and he would ridicule people, and he would post pictures of like steak cooking on a grill and be like, "Ooh, this is so delicious" and stuff. And he would do stuff like that. Like, this guy had a bone to pick on the idea that Yeshua didn't eat meat, and yet there's tons and tons of evidence from history. There's mentions from Eusebius, Epiphanius, Origen, and others, as well as just the Clementine writings that confirm that the early church did not eat meat. It's not even really a debatable thing. Every time the Ebionites are mentioned, the fact that they don't eat meat is also mentioned with them. Irenaeus mentions it. Epiphanius mentions it. I mean, it's Jerome mentions it. There's a letter between Jerome and Augustine where they mention that. So it's not even like a debatable thing. It's a historical fact. But this guy, he didn't want to make that information available to the general public. So he left out those quotes, those references to the gospel according to the Hebrews. And he tried to say that, well, there's two different gospels. There's the gospel of the Hebrews and the gospel according to the Ebionites. And he would use quotes from Epiphanius to quote, prove his point. But the thing is, Epiphanius says they use the gospel of Matthew written in Hebrew. And he refers to it as the gospel of the Hebrews that they use. He never says they use the gospel of the Ebionites. There's no such thing as the gospel of the Ebionites. Now, Epiphanius does say they've mutilated the text, but he also says that about the gospel of Luke that the Marcionites use. And I've said before, is it that the people that Epiphanius is attacking that mutilated the text, or is it the Catholic Church that mutilated the text? Like, we know for a fact that the Catholic Church mutilated the text, that they added stuff to the text and took stuff out of it and tinkered with it with no, like, they had no problem doing that. It's this whole doctrine of the pious fraud that the Catholic Church adopted, where you could lie in order to spread the gospel, which they got from their Messiah, Paul. So the Catholic Church, the people who have a history, a verifiable history of taking the text of the Gospels and adding to it and taking away from it and deleting stuff that they do, whatever they want to the text to fit their doctrine, you have a Catholic bishop, Epiphanius, who's going around blaming everyone else for that. And what I think it is that they changed the text, and these other groups still have the original. So the narrative they push is, well, we have the original. They're the ones that changed the text. But historically, that doesn't line up with the reality. The Catholic Church has been notorious for altering biblical text to fit their man-made dogma. And so, saying all that, I'm getting off my soapbox now. I'm saying all that to say, I think this is the one copy, the one attempt at doing the gospel according to the Hebrews where I actually went at it and did it in a way that's historically verifiable, that actually I'm not going to sit here and preserve something in the text that we know wasn't there originally. Like I've said before, this is an attempt at a restoration of the text. This is not some new translation or something like that. That's why there are texts in the Bible that we know were added later. The last chapter of John, we know was added later. It was, the 21st chapter is an addition. I left it off. I put a note in there. If you like the 21st chapter of John, then you can find it in any Bible you want. But I wasn't going to put it in here. There was a line in the book of Revelation that we know is a later addition. And I struggled whether to leave it in there or just include it, but put brackets around it. So I ended up putting brackets around it and just leaving it in there. But we know that this one line in the book of Revelation was added later because it's not in the earliest copies we have. In fact, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in the context of what's being said, but I went ahead and left that in there because that's something I could put in brackets and you would be able to tell for sure that it was added because I put brackets around it. But in an entire chapter, you put brackets at the beginning and the end, it may be missed. So I did the best I could to restore it to what we know, to what we can verify, we can historically determine was the way the text read as early as possible. Now, those quotes from the Gospel according to the Hebrews, they are probably not going to be in the same place that I placed them. I did the best I could to make the best educated guess possible to put them where I think they would probably logically belong. But I'm sure when we find an actual copy of the Gospel according to the Hebrews that I'm going to be wrong about some of it. And I'm okay with that. I mean, we do the best we can. So if there's a particular statement by Yeshua that I placed in the Gospel according to the Hebrews in chapter 12 and it's really in chapter 14, I mean, the information is still in there. Right? I mean, it's still I think better than what you have today in the modern Greek version of Matthew because we know for a fact that things were taken out of it. So let's put that stuff back. Even if it ends up being in the wrong location, if we find a copy of the Gospel according to the Hebrews, an original copy, then we'll fix it. Then we'll move it to the right place. So anyway, I guess that's it for now. So don't forget to download the latest copy if you're using the PDF. Version number is on page 3 right here. Version 1.02 is the latest one that I just uploaded yesterday. And the changes between 1.0 and 1.02 is really just typo correction, and there's a couple of spots I think I might have reworded one or two sentences to make it more easy to understand. But other than that, that's really the only changes. So anyway, if you want a copy of the book, there'll be a link in the description if you want a physical copy, and I'll also include the link to the download where you can download the PDF. So that's it. Thank you for listening. Talk to you later. Shalom.